Good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Craig, and I am your host. It is a pleasure to have you participate on today's webinar, COVID-19, Keeping Your Workforce Healthy and in Service. Before I turn over the webinar to Prosperity Indiana's Executive Director, I'd like to mention a few housekeeping items. Please be aware that all audio is muted. If you would like to ask a question, there are two ways to do so. You can use the raised hand icon on your screen. We will unmute your line and you may ask your question or questions. You can also type your question or questions in the Q&A box, which is also located on your screen. We all know that technology can be trying these days, especially while working from home. So if you lose your connection, you may also reconnect using the link emailed to you. Finally, if you have access to today's presentation and recording on Prosperity Indiana's COVID-19 Resources Hub at the website address noted here. And now I wish to turn it over to Jessica Love, Prosperity Indiana's Executive Director, for some opening remarks. Jessica?
Thank you, Carrie, and thanks to all joining the webinar today. I really hope everyone was able to get a healthy dose of vitamin D over the weekend. I know that the days that we're able to get out of the house and my family, we all seem to feel a little bit better about the world around us. And, you know, as we're seeing reports about spikes and suicide during this season and other impacts of all of this isolation, I think it is really important to think not only of ourselves and our families, but also of our roles as organizational leaders and coworkers as well. And in that vein, I must say how grateful I really am for our team members who are doing an excellent job as we enter week 11 of working from home. And we also appreciate Fifth Third's support of our work through our Strengthening Our Communities grant, which is enabling our COVID-19 capacity building efforts. So I'd now like to introduce Jadira Hoptree with Fifth Third Bank. Jadira is Vice President and Community Economic Development Manager for Fifth Third Bank Indiana region. She oversees Fifth Third's charitable giving process and deployment of their foundation grants, as well as lending and economic development programs for underserved communities in the state. Jadira, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I hope so, as Jessica mentioned, that everybody had an opportunity to get a little bit of vitamin D and to celebrate. This is a very important celebration, Memorial Weekend. I know that many of you, as I am, have family members and also have friends that serve for us. So having this celebration, it's very special for me. Once again, I want to thank Prosperity Indiana because even with a long weekend and holiday on Monday, they were able to schedule this webinar. It's so important for all of us. I look forward to learn a lot about how to keeping our staff healthy and in activities, etc. As I mentioned to you a few weeks ago, to the month of May, Fifth Third celebrated Fifth Third Day, May 5th, and we extended it to the celebration. And as a part of keeping all of us healthy, we committed the month to feeding our communities. And for every staff that walks at least 53,000 steps, we are going to be matching that to Feeding America. And those donations will stay in the state of where that staff belongs to. So I am very proud to say that Staff Indiana is a number 2, and I was just actually running just before this webinar to continue contributing to that. In addition, part of my part is the donations and the grants, and we so far have identified 450,000 in grants for across the state, and they're going to go into access to capital for a small business, again, others to feeding our community or human needs, and also for building capacity for organizations. So more to come on some opportunities that might impact you, organization as well. Finally, I want to remind everybody, because there is still 32 positions open, we have openings in Indiana. So right now, workforce development is very important. I tell you personally, this has been a career, very rewarding career for me. And I started in banking as a teller. And little by little, I was able to get opportunities to grow with the organization. So if you have yourself, you have people in your family, friends that are looking for a career that provide very good benefits, take a moment to look at 53.com. It's definitely worth looking into it. Or otherwise, as I mentioned, we have Next Job, which is a program to prepare your resumes, to give you some ideas, tips, and counseling for browsing and finding jobs across the nation, and now is expanding through South and Central America as well. So all of that, as you can see, as a summary, we are committed. We are committed to the community in general, our footprints, and to Indiana. If any of these options or anything else, I can support you. My contact information is right there at the Prosperity Indiana presentation. Feel free to reach out to me. With that, Carrie and Jessica, thank you again for putting this webinar together. Thank you for the presenter, and thank you for all of you for attending. Back to you.
Thank you, Judira, and thank you to our partners at Fifth Third Bank for making today's webinar possible. Before we begin, I'd like to overview Prosperity Indiana for those of you who may be new. Prosperity Indiana is a statewide intermediary organization with a local focus. Prosperity Indiana member organizations strengthen communities and improve lives in rural, suburban, and urban areas in all of Indiana's 92 counties. Members provide housing opportunity, they meet basic needs, they connect Hoosiers to jobs, they create vital places, they do all of this and more. We impact communities by promoting comprehensive community development efforts across the state, which include social determinants of health and encouraging inclusive growth. Individuals by fostering innovation and financial capability and asset building strategies, and increasing opportunities to access resources. And finally, we impact organizations by improving member capacity to impact communities and individuals and track the progress of their efforts. We do this through our resources, such as delivering training and direct technical assistance, engagement by bringing residents and practitioners to learn and support one another, advocacy through advocating for policies that support member work and keeping members informed of policy at the state and national levels, and finally through our signature programs. And now I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Kimball Richardson from Community Health Network Behavioral Health. Kimball received his master's degree with honors in counseling and counselor education from Indiana University in 1987. With over 30 years of experience in healthcare, he has been co-coordinator for emergency department services at Wishart Hospital Midtown Community Mental Health Center, now Eskenazi Health in Marion County, Indiana, serving in various capacities at St. Vincent's Stress Center, and is currently the manager of business development and referrals for Community Health Network's Behavioral Health. He is licensed in Indiana as a mental health counselor, clinical social worker, marriage and family therapist, and clinical addiction counselor. He was appointed by the governor to the Behavioral Health and Human Services Licensure Board and is the current board chair. Kimball is a former president of the Indiana Mental Health Counselors Association, and in 1996 was named Mental Health Counselor of the Year. In March 2011, he was awarded the Barbara Walker Cole Distinguished Counselor of the Year award by the Indiana Counseling Association. He is an adjunct faculty member at the University of Indianapolis and was named Outstanding Faculty Member of the Year in 2013. Kimball was a member of the inaugural board of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Indiana chapter. He is on the advisory council for the Indiana University Counseling Psychology Department. Kimball has presented at the World Congress on Stress, Trauma, and Resilience, the National Healthcare Coalition Preparedness Conference, and the National Neonatal Association. He does speaking engagements on a wide variety of behavioral health topics and serves as a contact for broadcast, radio, social, and print media. And now I'd like to turn it over to Kimball Richardson. Kimball?
Thank you so much, Carrie, and thank you for that nice introduction. I'm thinking to myself, this guy better be good with all that stuff going on. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining in. Thank you, Jessica, for the invitation, and thank you to Fifth Third Bank for sponsoring the lecture today. I'd like to talk to you about mental health stuff. And that's not always a topic that's been accepted, frankly, by the business community. And so I was very delighted to get a call from Jessica and asked to do a talk. I looked at some of your other presentations, which I thought were excellent. So I think you're covering the topic really well. And I'll tell you, after 33 years in being in healthcare business, starting out back in the late 80s, I got a lot of crickets out there when we were offering free lectures to people about how to keep your employees healthy and engaged. And so it's nice to see that come full circle. And now I actually have a little bit more wisdom, hopefully, than I did 33 years ago to share. So I'm going to tell you some things that you can do in your own organization, both in a longer term capacity and perhaps in a short term capacity, and some things for you guys to think about. I have worked in healthcare, but I've consulted with lots of different businesses. Actually, banking is one over the years. My specialty is in crisis intervention. And so not only am I helping to lead our internal support program at Community Health Network, but I also am currently coordinating the District 5 Resilience and Emotional Support Team. And District 5 is, technically speaking, Marion County and the surrounding 7 counties, but we've got several missions going on, a couple of which have been statewide. So more on that in just a minute. Thank you again, Jessica. I know that that's not your official logo. I put that green colored bar around it, but thank you for having me today. So I don't have to tell you guys why people get traumatized and why it's difficult to navigate things here recently. Not only did we have other regular, I'll call it regular trauma in our lives in terms of personal difficulties, family marital issues, God forbid, active shooter situations, whatnot. But then the COVID-19 situation came and hit many of us in lots of different ways. Of course, I work in healthcare, so that's a different trajectory. But in businesses, nobody has gone untouched with this situation. So sometimes we are traumatized primarily, which means we have a direct connection to some kind of a critical incident. And then other times we get traumatized just by listening to people who have had traumatic situations. So it could be, managers and leadership have vicarious trauma or secondary trauma just by listening to their frontline folks who have been going through some difficult situations. So either way, it can be tough. We want people to stay working, and these are lots of different things that the adverse effects of trauma can have on people, and they can be acute, which means they can happen very quickly and right here, right now, or sometimes they linger and can have chronic effects. So we know that it's very costly, figuratively and literally, to replace a good employee. So keeping people healthy and in service is important. That's what we're trying to do, guys. This is the two main things that we tell people when we do our interventions with different groups. We have two goals. We want to keep you healthy. Now, sometimes we say happy, which is nice. We want to keep you happy, but we want to keep you healthy overall. And frankly, we cannot afford to lose our good people. We want to help people stay working. I'll give you a quick example. 2.5 months ago, the statewide network called Indiana 211, which is a resource and information line, were used to taking about 1,000 to 2,000 calls per day from the public. This is a statewide organization. And with COVID-19, at one point, they got up to taking 25,000 calls in a day. Their staff, of which they had less than 40 full-time FTEs, 34 of those 39, frankly, people had only worked on the job for 5 months or less. They were literally facing losing almost their entire workforce to the stress of this. So we happened to put together a program for them. And although 2 staff members did end up leaving, the vast majority stayed and are very engaged, happy, healthy, doing well. And they weren't 2.5 months ago or so. So we cannot afford to lose our good essential people. So I read a recent, I recently read a study. It's not a super recent study, but 2015, not too far away. A big study, 700 people. This is not going to be brand new to you guys, but there is a causal link between people being happy and people being productive on their jobs. So it makes sense to put some money into your employees' mental health, because in the long run, it'll reward you, and personally reward your staff as well. So I'm going to tell you about a couple of things that folks can do. I think this is somewhat of a longer term project, but I think it's important for you to think about it, because what people are doing now, what leaders are doing now in businesses, whether you're in healthcare or not, they're thinking about the next crisis. So we're trying to deal with the COVID-19 issue, of course, we all are, but what can we do when the next crisis comes? And this is a good thing to think about. It is called peer support. There's different kinds of peer support. Peer support means that your own people are supporting your own people. And you are trained in providing emotional support, emotional first aid. We're not training people to be professional counselors. We're training people to provide emotional first aid support, so that either sometimes that's enough for people, or to provide them a conduit for other kinds of professional counseling care, such as employee assistance, etc. So often when somebody has a crisis or they're destabilized in some way, they need somebody to connect with them, someone who will listen to them. And sometimes it's often very effective when that person who's doing the connecting is a peer, somebody who knows their job, understands what it's like to do the kind of work that they do, and it can assist them in helping return to duty. The vast majority of people in this world are pretty daggone resilient. That means that when the crisis comes, basically don't do anything, get out of the way, let them heal themselves. But everybody can use a little bit of support every once in a while. So peer support can be very effective, and it's cost effective too, because it allows your own people to support your staff. Let me go back just a second, and to say that we have this kind of a model at Community Health Network where I work currently, and every place I've worked, we've had a model similar to this. It started out very big in the first responder community, police, fire, and EMS, and then it gravitated to the airline industry, then to healthcare, and then to all other kinds of businesses. So it's not just gathering people who want to be supportive and helpful. Okay, that is helpful. That's a good start, but people should be trained appropriately. And there are several different kind of models for how you can be trained. I'll show you in here in just a second which model we chose at Community Health Network. But here are some reasons why our team gets activated. Of course, they can be small scale traumas that can happen to just one person, or it can be something big as it can happen to a department or multi-departments or to a whole company, just depending on what the situation was. You can certainly add to this list too, but these are just some of the reasons why we've been activated over the years. Anybody who wants to be a member of our peer support team has to take training. And the training that we have selected is called Critical Incident Stress Management. It's an international based curriculum that's evidence informed and has been around since the very early 1980s. Our team members have to do several refresher trainings per year. We meet, we meet 6 times as a team per year. We ask people to attend at least 3 of those meetings if possible. And I used to have, I'm one of the leaders of our team. I used to have kind of a strong rule that you had to be in person to come to a team meeting. But, as of 2.5 months ago, I've pretty much changed my opinion on that. You can come virtually, that's fine. In fact, we have a team meeting coming up in a week or so, and we changed it to all virtual right now. Critical incident stress management started here in the United States. The inventor of it, if you will, is named Dr. Jeffrey Mitchell. He and his colleague, Dr. George Everly, who actually are friends of mine. I've gotten to know them over the years, taking advanced training, and now I'm a trainer as well. And it's a confidential intervention. And we don't respond to events per se, we respond to how people react to events. So sometimes you can have you can have a situation that sounds terrible, but people are kind of used to it and they can deal with it. But other times not. So we want to make sure that if people are handling things okay, we stay out of their way and let them be resilient. But when they need support, we can interact and go in. This is not a critique of an event or a situation. We're not trying to do after action discussions or process improvement. It's totally separate from that. Now, we call those meetings root cause analysis, and different organizations call those types of meetings different things. But this is totally emotional support. There's different kinds of tools that we can use in critical incident stress management, or CISM, we call it for short. Pre-incident education is essentially what we're doing right now, guys. We're educating people about stress and what can happen to you if a stressful situation or a critical incident happens. And let's say, for example, a critical incident happens, you can't sleep for 2 or 3 days later. Okay, and telling people ahead of time, you may have disrupted sleep. So they know, okay, I'm not going crazy. That there's something not inherently wrong with me. This is kind of a natural, expected reaction to a critical incident. We can offer one-on-one support. Group support is very effective and appropriate. All of these strategies are, and I'll say they're strategic as well. So team members do need to be trained. The training for this particular intervention model is 3 days initially, and then it's just refreshers periodically. You do want to have a mental health professional that's at least one, if not more, associated with your team as a consultant or as a participant in some of the interactions, but primarily we're looking for peers. Our particular program at Community Health Network, we call it the RISE team, Resilience in Stressful Events. People can call their teams whatever they'd like. We got started in January 2013. We've trained over 100 employees. Now, some people don't even have 10 employees in their business, and that's fine. You can partner with other businesses if you want to have a crisis team together, or there are other CISM teams around the state. There are probably 38 teams, I believe, that are throughout the state, some of whom respond outside of their own organizations and could be helpful to you. We've been pretty busy, guys, for the last 2.5 months, of course, as you may suspect. And most of the places in our hospital system have peers on the team. For example, doctors, nurses, chaplains, mental health professionals, but IT, people from respiratory therapy, people from the cafeteria, leadership, management, HR. Lots of people have been trained. You have to think about how you're going to contact your team. Now, we're very fortunate that we have enough people on our team that we can respond 24/7. We have a person who's on call for a month at a time that arranges all of the requests, and we try to when we have a request for services, we have to figure out, is the RISE team the appropriate response? And if so, what kind of intervention are we going to have, and who's going to be on the team? And who's going to be in the meeting? All these are very strategic ways to respond, and we can do this literally within 15 to 30 minutes to get something set up, or sometimes it's 2 or 3 days later, depending on the situation. We need to update this slide a little bit, but we've been busy. The more your organization knows about your team, the more your team gets used. So your team always has to be marketing themselves and going to staff meetings and talking, getting in a newsletter or getting somehow their name out there to say, we're here and we're available. And usually just takes 1 or 2 times for your team to have a successful intervention, that word gets around that, okay, this is a helpful organization and a helpful team that we have. This is just an example of our own team at Community Health Network. A lot of our folks are either nurses or mental health folks, but we have people from all over the organization that are members. And again, that means that they've taken the 3-day training, and that they've been vetted in other ways as well. You can't just take the training and be on the team. We have to make sure that your supervisor is okay with it, and that we somehow get a sense that you're pretty good with people and you have a good sense of personal boundaries. Pardon me. So we don't want folks who are closed and judgmental, but we don't want folks who throw open their arms to any situation and say, come and stay at my house and I'll pay your rent and take care of you for the next month. You know what I mean? We have to have some kind of somewhere in between those two kinds of responses. We're trying to take care of ourselves. This is a little meme I found that I thought was pretty good. Are we doing these things? Are we practicing good coping skills? And some of the things that we did for the 211 staff was we offered them a resiliency training. Some of their staff were, well, they had people from their 20s all the way up to their 60s. And we just assumed, wrongly, I think, at the beginning, that if you're doing a kind of a crisis response line, you must be a pretty resilient person. Well, some of these folks were pretty young, and they didn't have some of the life experiences that some of the rest of us have had. So we went back and did resiliency training for them, and they have found it pretty helpful. That's a little bit of a longer term solution that I would really encourage you to think about, how to put a peer support team together. Some of the things we did at the community, we were lucky when the COVID-19 situation hit, in that we already had the RISE team. We needed other things because things were so intense and fast and furious that we had to get a lot of other people involved supporting our staff. So we formed a caregiver well-being team that was not only members of the RISE team, but also people from all over the hospital system, that we had to pretty quickly consolidate resources and deploy all kinds of information that got pushed out. I know this is a lot to look at in one slide, but this is just some of it, 38 things up here. 38 things that we had done in the network to support our employees. And any one of these 38 things also had a committee and also had people working on it. So this was an extremely large project that was, it got headed up by folks from our talent department, from human resources in our talent department. And yeah, I'm just looking at all this stuff like, wow, we did a lot. So for example, then that was the overarching view. And then we broke it down from emotional, intellectual support, social support, spiritual, physical, and financial. And then within each one of those specifically, we said, okay, if you're going to have somebody's good at art and music therapy, how can we put them to service? And what of these categories are they going to fulfill? One of the things that we had to do is some of our staff were quarantined, perhaps like some of your staff. And so we wanted to reach out to them as well to say, we want to support you. We want to make sure that you're getting all the care and information, intellectual support, but also emotional support that you need. We created a lot of videos, either ourselves or we found videos that were vetted and appropriate and good to share with the staff, and this would get sent out via a caregiver newsletter once a week. Of course, this was all digital. And of course, all of our RISE team requests for support have been digital for the past 3 months as well. So again, some of these are financial, childcare things, educational, donation programs, some physical too. For example, I did a guided imagery series that was designed originally for our cancer patients to provide relaxation and to try to help folks stay healthy. And then it got put back into service. This was put out on a website for Community Health Network, and they said, well, this could be helpful for folks dealing with the COVID-19 situation. So not only did this get pushed out to our network, but then it got pushed out to around the state for other reasons. And there you can see the link. I'm actually a professional musician as well, so I got some of my band buddies to help out, and we created some music to go with it too. And I think our video production department put some video with it. So this was so how to keep your folks healthy. We were pretty fast and furious with some of the stuff that we were dealing with early on with patients in the hospital, the nurses, in fact, not being able to go into the rooms as much as they used to, or not being able to have all of the different kinds of support that they're used to being able to give a patient. And a nurse started just taking a piece of paper and writing her name on it, and would say, I want you to have this, and I want you to put it on your table right by your bed. And it said, I'm thinking of you even when I'm not with you. And this idea got brought up to this committee that we formed, the Caregiver Well-Being Committee, and our graphic design department, who also was looking to be helpful and to support folks, came up with some of these. And so these now are laminated. The nurses can give them to patients, write their names on them, write other messages on them. And these are just little things that your staff can also give each other, or you as leaders can give to your staff. So here's some of the caregiver well-being things that we've done. In addition to the RISE team, we also had more long-going, recurring support groups that we formed. And some of these were for specific areas. For example, we devised some groups that were just for our intensive care unit, or just for our physician staff, just for the folks who are in quarantine, for example. So we tried to customize them as much as we could. These are just some of the examples of the trainings that we had to do very quickly to our staff so that they could stand these support groups up. Because some of the things that we were trained in, we had to tweak our interventions a bit, specific to the COVID-19. So we adapted pretty quickly. We also stood up an on-call system, so that if we got overwhelmed, we could turn to our call system and have them come into action. And we've had to do that maybe 5 times in the past 2.5 months. Now, we've been busy that whole time, but and in fact, I've been the coordinator of this group during all this time. And about 5 times we got busy enough to where I had to go to the on-call person and say, could you take care of this one? This is an example of one of the announcements. How do you manage stress during COVID-19? And this is one of the groups that we have. We're just starting another group next week, I think it is. We're giving them specific titles. They're going to be for anybody who wants to join in. It's essentially an educational group. I think the next one's going to be titled, I love my kids, but I hate their homework. And we've partnered with a couple of different professional educators that they'll come in and give tips and tricks on managing homework for your kids. One is going to focus on grade school age children, and the other is junior high and high school. And then the other part will be question and answer. This is information about our for people who do communications. We had 100%, I don't know if you can see that green line right there, 100% click rate, which is almost unheard of for our caregiver well-being newsletters. And this is like 16,000 employees. Now, I know we have a fairly large organization, but even smaller organizations, sometimes it's hard to get people to look at newsletters, but people have been very, I'll use the word hungry, very interested and hungry for information. So it's been well worthwhile to put into a lot of time to all these endeavors, because people are using the information. I just wanted to let you know that we also put a video together. I just happened to be the one that did it. I thought I was going to be able to show it to you today. I can't. I can send the link to you guys, though, if you're interested. But it's how to manage anxiety. So that's my face. Uh-oh, you can't hear that. We also have a bereavement support group that's virtual and free for folks who are dealing with bereavement issues related to COVID-19. And there's information about that too. Finally, let me just give you a couple of examples and how our team has been requested. Sometimes we have things that are what we would call a pre-COVID, frankly, crisis. So, for example, we got requested to provide emotional support to our emergency department staff. Now, as you can imagine, people who work in the emergency departments are pretty resilient and pretty tough cookies in some way. But sometimes things, get to people, and we want to be able to provide that support when they need it in a timely way. Unfortunately, we had an 8-year-old girl who came into the emergency department. This was an abuse situation that really tacked on a lot of extra stress to the staff. And unfortunately, she passed away. So we did a debriefing for certain emergency department staff. And a debriefing means something very specific in the training that we do. So we certainly, critical incident stress management doesn't own the term debriefing, but it is a specific intervention strategy. So we had a debriefing. We also offered one-on-one support for one of the nurses who was particularly upset about this event. And not surprisingly, he has a daughter about the same age. So this was very difficult for him. Now, if you think to yourselves, who would this male nurse want to talk to if he was having a rough time? Probably another nurse who also happens to work either in the emergency department or some kind of intensive crisis department. And that's what we did. We were able to find somebody on our team who also had emergency experience in their background and was able to reach out to this nurse. For pandemic support, of course, these issues are more diffuse. They're not always just one specific thing. Everything that we've done so far has been virtual, and frankly, it's worked out pretty well. Sometimes people call in on the phone, sometimes they join visually, but for now, this is what we have to do, and it's been working very well. Of course, we have to have partners. We have an employee assistance program, and if your company does too, they may have crisis intervention support for you that they could utilize, behavioral health chaplaincy, and we also have some of our resident doctors helping as well. Some of our programs are just one-time meetings, and some are ongoing, depending on the situation. It's important that if you do put together a peer support group, that you keep your skills up, that you promote the program, and that you determine, is this effective? So we want to keep some metrics and statistics on that. Some references for you. I thought this was a nice little thing to read. Some of the things we literally made up, guys, as we were going along. So far, it seems to have been worked out pretty well. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions, if you'd like some advice, consultation, more information, I'm happy to help. Again, I want to thank you for listening, and thank you for being interested. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kimball, very much for your presentation today and for agreeing to join us as our presenter. Let's see, we have a question here, and I'll read it. Let's see. What's a best practice for small teams? Our team is generally 6 to 7 people. I can see where maintaining boundaries might be harder with such a small group providing peer support to each other. Is it best to provide peer support to people you don't know well or people you do know well? Should we partner with other organizations, as you mentioned, to make sure peers are outside of our organization, or does it make sense to all be trained and support each other internally?
Yeah, what an excellent question. The answer to all questions that have to deal with psychology is maybe, or
Yeah.
or it depends. Okay, but let me see if I can answer that somewhat specifically. I think for a smaller group, I would partner. I would find some partners. It's not always 100% necessary to go outside of your organization. Sometimes you can provide within organization support. But for a smaller group, say for less than 10, I definitely would partner with other folks. You could, again, if people want to contact me specifically, I can help you one off with that. But you might be able to partner with a CISM team that's already in or near your area, or with some mental health professionals that are in or near your area, or frankly, other organizations that you belong to, and say, hey, let's get a team and share a crisis response team together. That would be extremely cool, and I think very rewarding and worthwhile. So it is important to have some boundaries. The smaller you get, the more you're up in each other's business, frankly. So sometimes it's nice to have that outside, a little bit more confidential support.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question is, how do we get trained to provide peer support, and what does it cost?
There are several different kinds of peer support training. I've had probably 99% of the trainings, and I'm a trainer for some of those as well. You might hear the term psychological first aid. That's a really good training. It's a way to intervene, usually one-on-one with individuals, and that training is sometimes you can find that virtually and available. Again, it's called psychological first aid. The training that we have elected at Community Health Network, again, it's an international training model. It's called critical incident stress management. Usually the initial training is 3 days, and the cost, it depends on how many people and stuff like that. So for more ideas on that, contact me personally. I'm a trainer for that. Certainly I could potentially be available, or could get you in contact with other trainers who I know.
Thank you, Kimball. Does anyone else have any questions for Kimball? If so, you can either raise your hand on the display bar, or you can type your question in the question and answers box.
Let me give you another example. Like I said, we cannot afford to lose our good people when we have the resources, technology, and the know-how to support them. We've had a few of our nurses in our intensive care units who were, again, these are very hardy, very resilient, very bright and trained individuals, some of which have had many years of experience. But the COVID-19 situation, it rocked people's world. And this was very, very intense and difficult for some. And what we have been told, what they've told me personally, is that if we didn't have this internal peer support, I don't even know that I would have come back. Week number 2, week number 3, 4, etc. So as you can imagine, it's helpful to be supported by your own peers when you're going through tough situations like that. But this program works in all areas. I've worked for farming communities. I've worked for banks. I've worked for large multi-million-dollar organizations. I've worked for law firms. And any kind of industry could benefit from this. You just, you want your people to be trained appropriately, and you want to set it up right.
Another question we have is, are you intentionally using the word COVID, quote unquote, situation instead of quote unquote crisis? If so, why? And is it important to choose words wisely?
I love choosing words wisely. I think that's very important. So yes, I'm saying that there are two distinct terms. The COVID-19 situation was a crisis. So crisis is the overarching term. The COVID-19 situation brought new challenges for us as a crisis team that we had to adapt to, that we had to be flexible about. During the COVID-19 situation, which happened, from early March on, our team was not only responding to requests about that situation, but also to other crises. Just the example I just showed you, the little girl who came into the emergency department who passed away because of abuse. That didn't have anything to do with COVID-19, but it certainly was a crisis. So yes, I am using them specifically and to mean two different things.
Sure. This is just a reminder that if you'd like to ask Kimball a question, you can raise your hand or type your question in the Q&A box.
We've had to learn how to connect with each other in lots of different ways. Prior to early March in my career, I'd had a lot of opportunities. I feel very lucky that I've been in front of a lot of people, national, international, local audiences, giving presentations, but it's all been in person. So I get to see people's faces. I can gauge my responses accordingly and see whether the information I'm sharing is connecting with them. In this case, it's been a little more challenging. I can't see you, you can't see me, but I hope the information I'm sharing is resonating with you. And if not, I hope you would let me know if there's anything I could clarify. Be happy to do that.
It looks like there are no further questions. I'd like to again thank Kimball for his presentation today. It was very helpful, and I hope that you found it helpful as well. We want to thank all of our participants today. We are always pleased that you can be with us in our webinars, and hope you will join us for future webinars. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And thanks, Kimball.
Hey, Carrie, you still on?